Mm-hmm. All right. You guys are also punctual. It's not even 8 o'clock yet, guys. We're getting started pretty soon. Guys, good evening. And thanks so much for joining our very second, if I can say very second, but our second Wine Wednesday with Bricks and Barrel. You might notice that I am no longer, sporting a haircut. This just proves even more that barbers are a necessary or essential service. So, shout out to all the barbers and, well, more specifically to Miss Anna Peters, who has yet to see me since this whole thing started. So anyway, thanks very much, Bear Coast, for providing a beanie. Guys, I'm so excited to be able to, come to you guys tonight and talk to Gary. Gary is a SOMM, and he is a good friend of mine. We've met through mutual friends, and what can I say? He's definitely got more knowledge than I could possibly ever attain when it comes down to wine and where it comes from, as well as the tasting notes and everything else. And what we've been trying to do with Wine Wednesday is being able to bring some of the things that we might be missing by not going out into the real world a little bit closer to home, to you guys. And so last week we were able to talk to Josh Wright, and he was able to talk about some of the things that you might be able to notice when pairing things to make the food that you're eating maybe taste a little bit better. And the thing that we want to be able to bring to you guys tonight is a little extra, I guess, a little extra for whatever food you have going on or the experiences you have at home, to be able to bring the restaurant experience home with you guys a little bit more. Because truthfully, we can't go to restaurants. Taking out does not really count. Delivery doesn't really count the same way, because restaurants are experiences. And so we're going to be talking tonight about some of the things that are, kind of unique about wine. We're going to taste a little bit, as well as definitely, answer some questions you guys might have. Because how many times have you been able to talk to a sommelier directly? I, for one, don't even get to say the word sommelier very often. So I'm excited to be able to do that tonight. But I also want to let you guys know what Bricks and Barrel is. So Bricks and Barrel is an online bottle shop and wine club. We sell individual bottles, as well as we have a wine club. We ship out bottles every single month to those that are subscribed. You can start the subscription for just $45 for the first shipment. It goes up to $65 after that. But you always get wine that closely, adds up to about $70, if not more. And on top of that, too, what we try and do is source wines that you can't find at the grocery store. Trying to find things that are made by small, hardworking producers that are being hit right now quite a bit by what's going on. So that's what we are. Just a quick plug about, hey, what is Bricks and Barrel? why on earth is Trevor doing this? And then also I wanted to make sure you knew why I'm wearing a beanie. So yes, Miss Always Right, I am wearing a beanie, and it will probably happen for a while until I can convince my wife to give me a haircut in the backyard. So with that said, though, I want to be able to bring Gary on and actually start talking about wine as well as his background. Because let's be honest, he's going to be a lot more interesting than just listening to me talk. So let me bring him on. All right, Gary. You did change your shirt.
Yeah, duh. The other one was nobody needs to see that.
Yeah, well, I got to see that. And I feel pretty privileged. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Welcome.
So I gave a little bit of a spiel in email as well as some posts, but I was wondering if you might be able to tell people, hey, what's your background? Like, because you're not just a son. You've got a pretty, I don't know, diverse background, but don't know if you might be able to, expand on that.
Yeah. So the sommelier title is a pretty recent achievement, but it's been in the works for, I mean, we could say 5, 6 years in a certain sense. Um, but yeah, I've been in the restaurant industry for about 4 years. Prior to returning and working here in Fresno, I was in Seattle. I worked at a place called Canlis, fine dining, and that's where I kind of got the bug for this whole thing. Um, I and I will say, not to brag, but I have a master's degree, and then I got into the restaurants, and I think that speaks to just the way it has and still continues to grab a hold of me.
Why?
Why
Why
plays
did it grab a hold of you?
strong part in that. It's just something about the activity, the service, the a bit of the theater of working in a restaurant, giving people what they want. That's a great feeling. I love that feeling.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, that's to say I'm not to say you can't be educated to work in the industry, but I'm not your typical industry guy.
What was your master's degree?
A master's in theology.
Obviously, which is what most great sommeliers have.
I mean, I think it works. There's some correlation between the two.
I think so, especially when it comes down to conversations about how to servers and bartenders. They probably should have a master's degree in theology, or maybe psychology.
Yeah, there's something subsurface going on in the whole act, the whole drama of good service. Yeah, so it works. It all makes sense to me, at least. I don't know if anybody else. But.
Well, that's good. Hey, I gotta ask you. Do you hear an echo when I talk to you? Slight. Yeah, I might need to switch over to something to make it sound a little bit different. But what I'm going to do is actually not talk as much and make you talk even more. That works.
Okay.
That works. How do you become a SOMM?
Well, ideally, number one, you need some passion. You need the inspiration to go after it. It's largely self-taught. There are courses out there, but it's not like you don't go to school and get a degree. You don't sit for.
I mean, you did that.
So there's a lot of self-initiative. So that the passion's got to be there above all. Beyond that, just a curiosity, an interest in what's in your glass, what you're interacting with. And it does get very technical. You got to know history, geography, geology, agricultural laws. I mean, wine touches so much, and you got to be able to handle all of that, which again I think is fascinating. And I know a good amount, a little amount, but I know how much I don't know. And so for those who haven't advanced or a master sommelier, they're like gods in a sense. They're walking encyclopedias, which is I've had the pleasure of spending time with a couple, and I love it. But yeah, so and I was certified through the Court of Master Sommeliers. They're a nonprofit organization. They've been around since the 70s, and in 40 years, with an international presence, not even 300 people have become master sommeliers. That's how difficult it is. And so I attained kind of the first level, certified.
How many are there?
And then there's 3. Then there's an exponential jump up to advanced, and then another exponential jump up to master.
That is great. So for you, you sat for a test and you had a blind tasting, is that right?
Yes. So a month ago, I sat for my test in San Diego, and it was a day long, 3 parts. There's a blind tasting portion, 4 wines, 2 reds and 2 whites that I had to deductively taste through, which I think we're going to do a little later. And then there was a written test, and I had to, short answer and multiple choice and prove my knowledge. And then last portion is a service exam in which I enact or they set up, I should say, a restaurant scenario, and I act like I'm a sommelier present at the table. I'm opening bottles of wine. I'm making suggestions. I have to move in a certain way around the table, and I have to know cocktails and beer and ciders and sake.
Really? So not just wine. You need to know a lot of stuff.
Yeah, that's not just for show. That's
I mean,
knowledge
it
right
could
there.
just be a picture you printed out. I don't know.
No, that's a part of it. That's a part of all of this.
Well, let me ask you, what would you say is one of the biggest things that might be different from enjoying the wine and beverages at home and a restaurant?
I mean, first of all, the environment. I think environment plays a huge role in what you're drinking and how you're drinking it. And not to say restaurants are better than home or vice versa, but there's a significant difference if you're at home in, I don't know, in your regular t-shirt versus I put on a fancy shirt and yeah, I may have been wearing a tank top earlier. There's just a difference.
You have so many fans talking about how gorgeous you are on Instagram Live. So I feel like you just
I wish I could.
Or maybe you gave them a really good message.
Yeah, I've got some kind friends and family, but so just the expectation, the way you carry yourself into a place and how you sit down at the table, before you even touch the wine, that says a lot about how you're gonna engage the wine. Oh, should I wear headphones?
You know what, Gary? Give that a shot. Let's see if it works. If not, I might disconnect you and reconnect you, guys.
Okay.
This is like a bad phone call from the 90s.
Oh, no. This doesn't work with my phone.
In the meantime, guys, feel free to. Hey, the echo's gone. Oh no, now it's worse.
Do you have different headphones with a regular jack? I don't have an iPhone.
That you didn't need to say that out loud. We still love you.
I didn't even have an Instagram up until maybe 2 months ago, and that just to follow wineries and restaurants and industry. So for all my friends out there, I'm not gonna follow you. Don't hate me for it.
Hey, also don't hate me for this. I'm actually going to connect you and try and have you join back in. And then worst case scenario, I might actually have you join.
Perfect. I'll be ready.
Your wife's account.
If I have to.
All right, I'm gonna kick you off. Right. I'll ask you. I'm right back on. Everybody, please pour yourself a extra wine. Gary has Insta. See, you guys, Holly, do you hear any type of echo when I'm talking now? Actually, would you mind commenting? Is my voice still echoing, or is it fine now? Yep. I mean, my voice still sounds really bad to myself when I actually hear myself talk, but at least it's not echoing. So let me try and bring Gary back in, and if it doesn't work, we'll try something else. But no matter what, we're going to talk to him. All right, Gary. Let's try this one more time. No, you're good, Steve. How's that?
All right. Is this better?
I think it's better.
Okay.
You guys don't hear any echoes?
Yes, better.
Ah.
Perfect.
Outstanding. All right, good. Well, we were talking about what it was like for, I think, anybody to go to a restaurant and enjoy beverages compared to going home. Because I mentioned at the beginning, but Gary, like one of the things I feel like your background plays to so well, because you, from what I understand, like you've been into this, not because you fell into it, but because you want to be into it. So I'm like, when you've worked in restaurants and now that you have your certification sommelier or as a sommelier, what can people do? What would you say somebody could do to try and like make what they're doing at home just a little bit more like a restaurant, to help them escape or set some ambiance. Is there any like simple things that you would recommend people can do?
Yeah, set the table, fully set it. Put out some good plates, put out your silverware. I mean, you're going to make, it's going to be more mess on the back end to clean up, but yeah, set yourself up. Lighting is super important. If you can dim your lights, if you can light some candles. And I mean, we're joking, but put on a nice shirt.
Yes.
Yeah, like it's these little things that kind of, set you up and get your posture. And it's the way you approach, even if it's, hopefully it's not $2 chuck, but if it's cheaper wine, still approach it with some sense of, again, I've been talking about like the drama or the theater of service. I mean, I love it. And some would say it's pretense, and sometimes it is. I try not to make it pretentious, but there is something to be said about, like dressing up and preparing for the occasion at hand. So yeah, that's one thing. And then whatever the food, whatever you're eating, that doesn't mean you need to like make a fancy meal and make a bigger mess in the kitchen than you want. But whatever you're eating, take your time eating it. Whatever you're drinking, there are pairing rules or guidelines, I should say. Yes. But rule number 1 is drink what you like, and don't second guess that. If you like $2 chuck, drink it. Yeah. And if you like, whatever you like, drink it. Just drink it and enjoy it, and hopefully, as we'll get into a bit more, like just pay a little more attention to it. Try to find out why do you like it, and then if you're willing, use that to kind of bridge the gap, jump to other wines, make some lateral moves, and then maybe move forward in some ways. I mean, I love exploratory drinking. I love trying new things. But I also, there are those who they find what they like and they stick with it.
And that's one thing, especially as like Bricks and Barrel is now a little over a year old. And what I've learned is that when people find a wine, especially that they like, they don't need to gamble as much anymore. And I feel like, I don't know, like being able to know, like, if I spend $18 and I know I'm going to like it, it is something that people like going back to. I totally get that. I really do. Because like, it's such a gamble. What if I spend $20, I take it home, I sip it, I'm like, oh, this is horrible. Like, I've just now wasted $20. Even though most places like Trader Joe's and even some places like I think Save Mart, you're able to like take the wine back, but you're not doing that. So I don't blame you. Like sometimes, like just, if you like it, stick with it. That's great advice. And also setting the table. Fun fact: my wife sets the table even at fast food restaurants. She does. She gets the little the little roll up that comes in the plastic thing. She'll set that up, and she set the table even there. You had mentioned something though when we were talking before this call started about being able to pause and like smell, and actually you call it deductive tasting. I was wondering, would you be down for maybe going through what would be the SOMM style deductive tasting? And then, you also mentioned, I think, a really quick tip if you don't want to go full SOMM level. And would you mind taking us through one of those with the Maddie if you have it?
Yeah, absolutely. So this evening I'm drinking the Maddie by Madeline, Central Coast Cabernet Franc that is available now on Bricks and Barrel. I think it's delicious. I just opened it. I've been sipping on it. I love Cab Franc. As soon as I saw it on the website, I said, I got to try it. Especially because there's not a whole lot of Cabernet Franc grown here in California. So I want to support that. I want to support the people making it. I want to support the people growing it. I mean, Cabernet Sauvignon has its place, but it's got a really large place, and I would like to see some other things on the market. So first thing we do is you look at it, because you taste with your eyes. So deductive tasting is using all your senses. I mean, maybe not your ears, unless it's bubbling, but but we are listening. So the idea is be present with the wine. Let the wine speak to you. Don't speak to it. Don't tell the wine what it should be. Don't, I guess it's kind of let go of your expectations and just face the wine. So first we look, ideally over a white
piece of paper just to get a true understanding of the color. And with red wines, it can be the main colors are like a garnet, like a brick garnet, to a ruby, to like a purple, a dark purple. And I would call this is a ruby.
Yeah.
And also can you see through it? And it's pretty translucent. So it's a ruby. It's a little clearer. I'm sure some of you have had like Cabernet Sauvignon that are like purple and inky, and you can't see light through them. Mm-hmm. That's a clue. Tells you what you're drinking. Mm-hmm. So when I see this lighter color, lighter clarity, I'm thinking this is going to be a slightly lighter wine. And I kind of keep that in the back of my mind. And then we smell. Get your nose in there. Don't take like huge breaths, but take some good sniffs. Swirl it. It's not just a pretentious thing. Swirl it. Let the oxygen play with the wine. It releases aromas. So swirl it. And first thing, fruit.
Yeah.
I get it's like red and black fruits. So when I say red fruits, I mean like red berries, pomegranates, cherries, cranberries, things that are usually a little tartar. And then there's dark fruits like blackberries, blueberries, plums. Mm-hmm. So this is like red, dark red, like dark cherries, but not heavy dark fruit. And then I think the condition of the fruit, is it underripe, is it ripe, is it overripe, is it baked, is it stewed? I mean, every single one of these perceptions you can keep narrowing down further and further and further and get as specific as you can. And
right now,
I hope I'm not losing some of them.
Right? You have yet to
taste.
So you're just smelling it right now. You're able to pick up so many of them.
Yeah, I'm still on the nose. And our sense of taste is more olfactory than it is palate.
And
so
by olfactory,
the nose will tell us more.
Are olfactory.
Yeah.
And then you have your taste buds.
Yeah.
And working together, there's a little bit of a symphony that turns into what.
Definitely.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and I usually when I taste it on the palate, I try to confirm what I've been smelling. Am I getting the same things? Hopefully. But sometimes not. Sometimes wine will play with you. You smell one thing, and then it'll throw something else at your tongue, and that's fascinating. So yeah, this is some red fruit. There's a bit of like a green earthiness, not like a green pepper, but yeah, it's a little dirty, which I love.
Okay, we're just going to need a pause there with that statement, Gary.
Yeah, feel free. Take that out of context. But this is not a super clean, super polished wine. It's got some slightly rough edges to it. One thing I is notably absent is like a lot of vanilla, a lot of baking spice, a lot of oak presence. This isn't an over-oaked wine. It's seen some oak, I'm sure, because there's a roundness to it. It's softened, which means it's touched oxygen at some point in its process, but it's not a oak bomb. And you can tell how I feel about oak bombs.
How would you describe what oak smells like? You're smelling still. Is it smoky?
Oak.
Is it? I mean, it depends on
it can be.
There can be a lot of different things. But what do you smell?
So I can't say I'm specifically smelling the oak. There might be like a hint of baking spice.
Sure, but if you did, if you did smell it,
if I did, again, vanilla, like vanillaed fruit. Again, strong baking spices like Christmas cookies. And then sometimes there's a bit of that smoke, some of that char, if it's a really charred oak barrel. But none of this is present. None of that is present in here. So that's deductive, not just what you're smelling, what you're not smelling.
I love it.
And that's, at least try to get three things. Get a fruit, get a non-fruit, like this dirty earthiness, and then the oak. I'm not seeing a lot of oak. Okay, now we taste it.
And while he's tasting, I'm going to say every time he says the word dirty, you have to take a sip at home.
So take a good sip, swirl it around, rub it all over your palate, your tongue, back of your tongue, get it on your gums. Experience this wine, because different parts of your mouth will tell you different things. So what strikes me is not so much the flavors on the palate, but the structure. So it's got a little more acid to it. Acid you can pick up in your salivary glands. Take a sip, swallow it, and see if your mouth is watering. Now, all wines have acid, even red wines, but so we're trying to determine how much acid. So there's a good amount on this, and that plays well with like kind of the crunchy redness of that fruit that we smelled. Alcohol, there's not a lot of heat on this. And tannins, we swirled it all around. It's not gripping my mouth. This isn't a super tannic wine. So I think this is, in terms of structure, this is really approachable. In that it's not going to overwhelm your palate. It kind of cleanses the palate more than anything, thus making it food-friendly. High acid wines are food-friendly wines. And generally, European wines are higher acid wines. They're made to go with food. Here in the States, we typically will make our wines kind of stand alone. So there's not as much acid to them. Right. And that sometimes they can overwhelm your dish. Yeah. So you can tell all my preferences as I speak. I like higher acid things, I like European things. Totally, but I love this because this is more European.
To what Josh Wright was saying, even when
Josh and I are on the same page.
He's a white wine fan, and I think that he's also said to me, maybe not on Instagram Live last week, but he's mentioned how much he loves lower acid and European style, just because one, you're able to enjoy it more. You can drink more and not necessarily, hey, your tongue is now numb. But like you're also able to, I think, with the European style wine, not get what would be. I always think about a Zinfandel I had once when I was on the Central Coast. It was an 18% Zinfandel. I'm like, I don't know if I can even call this wine anymore. I mean, it was fun, and if somebody wants to take a shot, rock on. But at the same time, like there is something really cool about being able to have, like you said, lower acid, or not lower acid, lower alcohol, but sometimes pairs well with food because that then goes through that whole experience. So, sorry, but keep going. I just want to say, yes, I totally agree. I think as you get the gateway, there's sometimes gateway wines that lead you towards that. A lot of people end up where you're talking right now, just lower alcohol and more going on.
Yeah. It took me some time to get there myself. And I think a lot of SOMMs, at least in sommelier circles, the word acid freak is thrown around. Really? Like sommeliers are acid freaks. We like these high acid.
I don't know, an addiction to some sort of street drug. So I'm just gonna throw that.
Yeah, okay. I know. SOMMs are. It's a weird subculture, but it's fun.
It is.
So continue tasting.
It's fun. I can definitely imagine it. You just went through, I think, a lot of. Maybe not the whole thing, but a lot of the deductive tasting. Can I ask you, though, you mentioned this before we got on, what is a simple way that somebody at home would be able to do their own version that might not be able to know, hey, this is obviously overripe raspberry with a little bit of a cherry nose. Like, no, I have no idea what this is. What would you recommend for those that might be, I don't know, overwhelmed by what it could be with wine? Like, just simple.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, wine... There's so much going on in the glass, and hopefully through that little deductive example, like shows you this is complex. There's a lot, but at the same time, don't get bogged down by that. Don't worry about that. And so I've got a good friend, buddy of mine here in town named Teddy, and we've tasted a lot together. And he plays this game with me and with whoever is around drinking, and he'll pull everybody in. Like I've been to some parties with him. He'll be like, guys, just drink, put this in your glass, we're going to taste this. And he plays the game, give a fruit and a non-fruit. That's it. Whether you're smelling and tasting, pick a fruit.
So this side,
again, like this, like red, raspberry, cranberry. I'm getting some red fruit, raspberry, cranberry. And then a non-fruit. I said earthiness earlier. Pardon me.
It's okay, I didn't feel that.
Gravity. So this earthiness. There, you tasted wine.
That's it.
You thought about it. You gave it 30 seconds. Yep. And so even at the restaurant here at the Annex Kitchen with staff, when we introduce bottles of wine, I'll play that game with staff. And I've had a lot of staff members who are, originally were like, I can't taste wine. I don't know what this is. Like, no. just think for a minute, not even a minute, for 20 seconds. And I turned a lot of people on to at least their ability to be a little more specific in their tastes, and they've hopefully are enjoying their wine more when they drink. I've even had a couple staff members come to me like, we used to drink the cheap stuff. I can't do it anymore because of you. Yeah. So I think I've done my job.
I think you have.
But yeah, fruit and non-fruit.
At least a couple.
I'm trying. That's my goal.
I mean, again, this goes back to your master's degree, though. Like, you can never really lose that. That's just part of who you are now. Like, you're going to be one that helps people. I mean, here or wherever the soul lies. I was curious, though. Too,
very close to the stomach.
Hey, I got a question online. Does your mustache help you taste wine?
Yeah, it soaks it up and it holds it. No, no. And I'm letting it go. I'm letting it get crazy. So we'll see how.
Again, beanie. There's a lot going on under here. None of it's good.
Yeah.
None of it.
Yeah.
Is good. But it's gonna stay underneath this beanie for as long as it will hold. Sorry, I gotta stop touching my face. My wife has messaged me. Sorry. I mean, this is part of like grown-up protection. Here we go. I will keep my hands down. I wanted to go down a few questions too, though, that people had asked. So one about the mustache. Good to know. It's a great look, though. I wish mine was as
Thank
cool.
you.
I joke around, but like apparently so far only people with mustaches have shown up on Wine Wednesday. So maybe that's just going to be a theme. I'll provide mustaches if you don't have one. If you ever show up, ladies, don't feel like that should, push you out.
Yeah, that's your niche in the wine world.
Just mustache.
It works.
Mustache people.
Yeah.
Can I ask you though? So Steve had thrown out a good question when we were talking about restaurants. Now, so far, all these restaurants are doing to go, and I got to ask: is Annex and those that are actually visiting or tuning in, not from Fresno, Annex? Would you describe Annex really quick? Annex Kitchen, where you've worked?
Yeah, so I've been there a couple years, and they've been around about almost 5. Annex Kitchen is Italian, primarily, kind of also very seasonal. It's like very rooted in California, what we have access to near us, and then translated into Italian food. So fresh pastas, brick oven pizza, also another wood-fired grill that they cook steaks on, and fish, and so that's the food. Amazing craft cocktail bar, one of the best bars in town. And then the wine cellar we're working on. When I joined a couple years ago, I kind of put my sights on that, and it's been a couple years. And the plan was get this sommelier degree, bring that back to the Annex, dive even deeper into the wine program, and then pandemic. Right. So that's on hold right now. But yeah, a good Californian and Italian wine list primarily.
Absolutely.
A couple other gems sneak on there every once in a while.
I think that was.
But yeah, it's a good spot. I mean, it's busy. It's we've got a lot of wonderful regulars. I miss seeing a lot of these people.
Yeah, I don't blame you. And I gotta say, Annex, in my opinion, is one of the best restaurants in the Fresno area, Central Valley. I mean, especially when it comes down to so much of the food that most of the rest of the state, if not country or world, gets comes from where we live. But for some odd reason, there's only a handful of restaurants that come to mind that really try and take that seasonality as well as like that supply chain and just put it right on the table. I think Annex does a great job. How's Annex? Yeah. This is the question that Steve was kind of asking. How do restaurants, and specifically maybe Annex, try and keep that ambiance that you were talking about, that experience alive as we're going through this? Do you see any, or do you notice anybody doing a good job of like, hey, let's keep this kind of feeling that you normally get in the restaurant and take it home with you? Do you know if anybody's doing that?
Yeah, I can think of one. And I will just say that the Annex is doing takeout and delivery, and they're keeping their heads above water and still doing some really good work. So if you're local, support them. Because there's not just me out of work, but a lot of good people who are at home right now when we would be running around like crazy on the dining room floor at this moment. But so I will make a pitch for my previous place of employment up in Seattle, Canlis. fine dining establishment, James Beard Award winning, just an incredible place, both its food and its service, but also it was a wonderful place to work. I still carry a lot of the lessons I learned there with me. So when the pandemic hit Seattle kind of before anybody else, and they immediately shifted gears, went to different forms of takeout, and they did like bagel sandwiches for a while, and they're now doing like family meals to go, like fine dining family meals, bottles of wine. And they have, so one of the things they've always had is a live piano player every night at service.
Cool.
So they put a camera on the piano player and they live stream every night. So you can have the canless dining room in your own house. So I mean, I follow them because I'm close to them, but they've been doing some incredible things. They've been very, very creative in this time. And yeah, they're killing it. So I would hope some other places that are looking for some inspiration, some other restaurants, check out Canlis, Canlis. Check them out and follow suit.
Yeah, I don't blame you. You know what I'm going to do too is I'm going to throw out, hey, anybody that's watching, if you guys know of any restaurants that you've experienced lately that have kind of gone above and beyond to accommodate this whole situation, trying to help bring that restaurant experience home, DM us. I'd love to be able to post it later on in Instagram story and just kind of share the idea. And maybe if you yourself are part of the restaurant industry, steal it. There's no wrong in stealing ideas right now. Everybody's trying.
Absolutely.
I think, in my opinion, just to try to, make something out of what's going on right now. So if you guys know of anybody doing stuff, I'm going to throw out, actually, I got to say, my brother, Jeff, down south, he runs a coffee shop. And quickly, coffee shops became a little different because you couldn't really have people sit down, hang out, that ambiance. And so I know what he's done is he's actually turned into a virtual pantry. Like, hey, do you need some avocados? Do you need some, breakfast burritos? What do you need? And, he's actually been doing deliveries, but groceries and everything else. I don't think he's doing toilet paper, but almost everything else. So I know if there's other people that you guys know about, DM us. I'd love to be able to post that later on. And Gary, it's okay. We have a few questions I was going to keep throwing at you. You ready?
Yes.
Perfect.
Well, and I just want to pause. So I've been sipping on this wine more. The tannins are beginning to, they're slow. They're quiet. They're sneaky. If anybody else has been drinking Matty, but
yeah,
sometimes wine will do that. It takes a little while to get there.
That
Ask away.
Because a lot of times people, put it through a decanter. They can let it breathe. You swirl it, but it changes. I mean, wine when you open it compared to like when you let it breathe, whatever, it changes big time.
Absolutely. And so it's good practice to, taste it when you open it. Over the course of the evening, check in with it again. Am I getting anything else? Something else coming up? And then if you don't finish the bottle, I like to drink the bottle the second day and see what kind of a full 24 hours of some oxygen. It'll be like a different bottle the next day.
It can be a totally different bottle.
Yeah.
And actually, going back to this too, the whole idea with this is, okay, yes, you can nerd out about wine. You can pick up tannins and you can pick up all these things to try and become your, small version of sommelier wherever it is you live. However, Gary, what you and I were talking about is how important it is too to pause once in a while and pay attention to what you're eating and drinking. Not because you're going to be a sommelier, but because all of us are going through so many different things right now that are causing anxiety, and we're thinking about worst case scenarios and how do I, stock up on essentials, when really being able to pause, sniff, look at the color, it takes your mind off of things for at least 2 seconds. And I cannot emphasize enough how important that is for me personally, and I'm sure for other people in general. And hey, and if you're doing it with wine, then after that you get to drink wine, and well, that helps too. The fact that you're pausing with wine helps too. So I think with all this, I would really encourage people, if they can, take some of Gary's advice. Pick 2 things, one fruit, one non-fruit. Start there, and then it will be a gateway. Though you will eventually be sitting for a blind tasting to try and figure out the difference between an Albarino and a Gruner Veltliner or something else. Yeah, I mean, hypothetically,
which is always a conundrum.
It is. It's a tough one. So a cute woman sitting at the end of the table here asked a question. Hey, if you're feeling fancy, what do you drink, Gary?
Bubbles.
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 What's a bubble for you? Where do you?
I mean, champagne. champagne's the king. And if you want to be really fancy and you're willing to spend a bit on it, a good champagne. And there's a lot of the big brands out there. But if you can get your hands on something a little more under the radar, I mean, I can get into a whole thing about what's been going on in Champagne with growers and big houses and blah, blah, blah. Who cares? Champagne. But there's so many other good bubbles.
Say champagne. I mean, I learned this from too many people spouting the one bit of wine knowledge they know. Hey, if it's not from the region of Champagne, it's not champagne. Are you talking about that region, or are you talking about like, hey?
Yes.
Okay. So French.
Yeah. So that is illegal. Like I said, there's so many laws, especially in Europe.
Yeah.
And so when champagne is legally only from the region of Champagne, or Bordeaux from Bordeaux, Burgundy.
These are the laws that we really should be protesting here in America. I mean, these are the important things that we should be marching in the streets about, personally.
I mean, we kind of the American wine industry has kind of flaunted those laws for a long time. Our laws here are a lot looser. They're kind of bare minimum, just to guarantee the consumer what you're drinking is what it says on the label is what you're drinking. Beyond that, it's free for all. The winemaker can put whatever they want in their bottle.
They can, and they can call it pretty much whatever they want too.
Yeah, it's literally the Wild West out here.
Which is ironic because you have a really loose production rule, but you have a very strict distribution rule. Like that is kind of a flip on its head when it comes down to America versus Europe, where you can get wine at McDonald's in Europe, but granted, I'm sure many people on this Instagram Live have drank wine out of a McDonald's cup at one point, but still, they actually have it in the soda fountain in Europe. But when you come here, like, you can call wine, hey, if it's red wine, and it could be a mix of all the varietals. It could be anything, or even not even 100% Cabernet. It can still be called Cabernet. It's just it's a weird thing. But bubbles is your answer, and I'm going to throw out one.
Yeah.
For others that love bubbles, California stuff. So one, I have loved Pet Nat recently quite a bit. It's not as classic as far as like champagne by any means, but Pet Nat has been something I love because it's a little bit more like the kombucha that I love drinking when I'm not drinking wine, as well as like it's got a really good, I think, like aromatics, and it's still got that bubbles and everything else. But what else would you recommend as far as California goes, or other wines that people should try other than just champagne, from Champagne?
Yeah. So a number of champagne houses, brands, have presence here in California. They own some vineyards. They make California champagne, California sparkling, like Domaine Chandon and Tattinger. Tattinger has a presence up in Mendocino. Okay. So those are fun expressions, like old world brought to the new world, using the same method of making the wine, the same grapes, but they're usually a little fresher, a little fruitier and brighter, just because we have a climate here that affords us riper fruit more generally. But beyond that, Prosecco gets a bit of a, like, oh, that's the poor man's bubbles. But there's some good Prosecco out there.
Josh Wright just threw something out there, too. Rodenere Estate in Anderson Valley is killer. Cali
Roeder. Yep, Roeder is another one.
Thank you very much, Josh.
Yes.
It seems like this groupthink right now is doing a darn good job of coming up with some ideas, too. Jeez.
I see the comment Cava. Cava is Spanish bubbles. Same method of production, some different grapes, but bang for your buck bubbles. Cava. You're going to get a great bottle for under $20. You want a good bottle of champagne, you're going to spend at least $40, $50. So again, Roeder here, Domaine Chandon in Napa, Mumm, M-U-M-M in Napa. I mean, there's a lot of quality sparkling producers here in the state. And I think I recently read like the market for bubbles has just gone way up. So more people are making more quality product. When fancy, and plus bubbles, I know we think you sip champagne to start the meal and then you move on to the real wine. Yeah. You can drink champagne, appetizer, salad course, main course, maybe a slightly sweeter champagne for dessert. nothing pairs like bubbles. Again,
Doesn't
high
it?
acid, and then bubbles clear the palate. Champagne is one of the most food-friendly wines there is. And when I say champagne, I just mean bubbles in general. So don't lock champagne in the New Year's Eve
Yeah.
closet. Like,
Leave
let it out.
for
Let it take
toast
over your
at
whole
wedding.
house.
Right. No, there's more than
Yeah.
that. Totally.
Yeah. So champagne, also fancy.
What if they only drank red? What
That's a
would
good
be
question.
a fancy?
Only red. You know, everybody, I mean, the big ones are like a nice big bold cab or a nice
Yeah.
delicate Pinot. You know, this Cab Franc, this would make me happy.
I love it.
I mean, personally, especially at my time at Annex, I've become acquainted with a lot of Italian wines. If you can find a Barolo
Yes.
or Barbaresco, oh man, I would be a happy man if that was on the
I don't
table.
blame you.
Again, slightly spendier wines, but worth it. I think worth every
You
penny.
know what? Actually, I was going to then parlay that into the next question that Mr. Simon Biasel, who I had wanted to mispronounce his last name, but at the same time, I like him too much. He actually had a question that's related to what you just said. Like, hey, if you were to get a wine that is kind of underrated but is readily available online and in stores and doesn't break the bank, what would you go with? Especially, let's go with a red wine, because I think those can really add up pretty quickly. Even though champagne can add up really, really quickly, you know, red wines as well, especially in California. Is there an underrated varietal that you would recommend?
Yeah, I'm drinking it. Cabernet Franc.
There you go.
It kind of bridges the gap if you want like a more delicate, brighter, earthier wine like a Pinot.
Yeah.
Or a darker fruited, slightly bolder like a Cabernet Sauvignon. This kind of flirts with both.
Seriously.
Oh, I'm sorry. So yeah, I love Cab Franc. I have for a long time. A good go-to, I mean, in terms of regions,
Sure.
Washington. Yeah. Go to Washington State.
Mm-hmm.
They're killing it with Cabs, Merlots, Syrahs, Riesling. And I mean, there's some big players up there. You can, if you want, you can spend some money in Washington. Sure. But compared to California, I think there's some pretty good value up there.
I totally agree. I totally agree. And actually, one of the ones that I was texting with one of my friends tonight about was Barter and Trade, which is one from the guys that make Fabulist and Field Recordings, Andrew Jones. He does grapes he gets from Washington, but he produces it in Paso, so it's Paso wine. But it was great. It was so good, and also it over-delivers, I think, for the price. And I think it's partially because the grapes came from Washington. Even though they had to truck them all the way down to Paso, it's still... Yeah,
land prices aren't nearly as expensive up there. I mean, that's a lot of what you're paying for when you buy a bottle of wine is you're paying for land. Yeah. And when Napa, an acre of Napa costs $400,000, I mean, they got to cover their costs.
They have to cover their costs, and they do it by...
So if you're willing to look to, you know, slightly lesser known California places or even other states, and not just like the West Coast, like every state makes some kind of wine. I've had the pleasure of enjoying some New Mexican wine and some Arizona wine. Yeah. They grow some good wine out in the desert, out in the Southwest. Also Virginia. Wine's been made in Virginia for, I mean, going back to like the colonists. Yeah, and even again, New Mexico, the vines were planted there before the Spanish hit the West Coast here in California. So like, there's history. If you know your history, let that direct you a bit as well. In terms of your wine, yeah, it's not always been California. The last 50, 60 years, yeah, the story's been California. But prior to that, there's a rich heritage in this country that got swept away with Prohibition. Yes. Unfortunately. But that's for another. That might be for another
Instagram live conversation.
Yeah.
I know. there was a question that came up that was really good that might be coming, or might be perfect for a lot of people. What's your go-to last-minute dinner if you have a red wine? Like, hey, I know I'm drinking a red wine, and hypothetically speaking, there's a pandemic and I'm not leaving the house. What should I throw on the stove to be able to like pair well with it and really enjoy it? And I say red wine, you're drinking Maddie right now. Let's go with Maddie.
Maddie. So, yeah, I'll answer for Maddie, but I'll break it up into like kind of two general types of red wine. Are we drinking, again, a little lighter in its fruit profile, lighter in body, a little higher acidity, like this Maddie? Yeah. Oh, then I would go for, well, I mean, acidity is food friendly. So a dish that is overall not so heavy, but that has maybe a little creaminess to it, a little, a little bit of that fattiness. First thing came to my mind, I don't know why, risotto.
Yeah, okay.
Like a creamy risotto would play beautifully with this wine, especially if you flavored it with some like fresh herbs, maybe some truffle salt if you have that.
Which all of us do in our pantry, obviously.
I mean, I've been gifted so much. If you want it, you just let me know.
Why am I not surprised? I mean, I'm not. I have nothing that has the word truffle on it anywhere in my house. Nothing.
Yeah. Well, just, let me know. I'll get you some.
You Purell first.
Absolutely. And hopefully risotto's not too esoteric of a dish. You're just cooking rice in broth.
No, it's not esoteric. That's why I love it, actually. Risotto is really good. My sister posted a picture the other day when she tried Maddie for the first time, and she did mushroom soup. And it was but it was actually very risotto-esque. Like, it was a little creamy. Granted, she kind of steers away from like actual cream, uses things like coconut creamer and other things like that, but it was still creamy, mushroom, herby. I think that there was definitely a lot of risotto-esque tasting notes to the dish she paired with it. It looked perfect. So I don't blame you. I thought that was really good.
Yeah. And then second part, like if you've got a heavier red, like a Cab or Merlot, something that's bolder, darker, just heavier, more tannic. A good pairing rule: tannins love fat.
Okay.
That's why Cab loves good fatty steak.
So if you are possibly big boned or fatter, you most likely like tannic wine.
I won't comment on that, but
pretty much just that. Yeah. Okay.
But yeah. So again, not that during quarantine you might have a couple like T-bones sitting in your fridge, but if you got some ground meat, I don't know, turn it into burgers or turn it into I don't know, some kind of like make patty melts. Make patty melts with a good cheese.
Hey, as long as you
drink that Cab.
Gary, as long as you set the table, it'll be a good night.
Yeah.
That's all you really need to do. We're getting a few questions also right now about Italian wines. I want to know if there's any like Italian wines that you just love to drink. I mean, you said already a region or two, but go for it. Open question. What wines do you love?
So I mentioned Barolo, Barbaresco. These are northwestern Italian wines from just south of the Alps. But kind of the region I've been discovering and just falling in love with, and Josh may have mentioned this last week. He mentioned Alpine wines. So northeast Italy, just kind of go over to the other side. Just under Austria, there's a region called Alto Adige.
Okay.
And it historically was kind of it's a mountain pass in the Alps, and historically it's like a gateway between Italian-speaking culture and German-speaking culture. And so even though it's in Italy, they speak German there. They eat a lot of German-Austrian foods. So their wines are made more in the German-Austrian style, which is kind of very clean, very pure expression of place, not a lot of blending. They kind of just let the grapes shine on their own. Crisp, aromatic, food-friendly. They do reds and whites, more whites, like Riesling. And
that makes sense.
I just drank a Kerner, Kerner, Kerner. It's a Riesling crossed with another grape once upon a time. Mind-blowing bottle. When I opened it, it tasted like a Gewürztraminer. The next day, it tasted like a Riesling. Like, it was all over the place. And you can ask my wife, I was just gushing about it. So Alto Adige. I mean,
like you might, whatever. Fair enough.
Yeah. Oh, so that's in terms of Italy. I've been exploring that region a bit more. Northeastern Italy,
Nice.
and then Sicily. Sicily in the wine world right now is taking off. They've kind of rediscovered their wine heritage. They're not just making mass production Marsala and blah red wines. Their recommitment to quality. They're making a lot of great stuff from the island of Sicily, both reds and whites. Native grapes to the island, thriving in their volcanic soils. And it's Mount Etna, the active volcano, went off not even more than like a few years ago. These grapes are growing on that hillside. So I think the lava typically flows the other direction, but people are planting their vineyards in harm's way.
In your sommelier test. What direction does the lava flow on Mount Etna?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Thank you.
But yeah, so I would go like top of Italy, up near the Alpine border, and then to the very bottom, Sicily, Mediterranean.
That's awesome.
Delicious.
That's awesome. Okay, perfect. The other question we had was, hey, natural wines. What are your take on those? I know that we actually have a few that we're carrying right now. We have a Pinot as well as a Rosé. But what's your experience with them? Do you have a preference or an opinion even about natural wine?
I don't have a lot of experience. I've had a few. I mean, I think they're just another expression of what grapes can do when allowed to ferment. And I know the mantra of natural wine is like minimal intervention, indigenous yeasts, which is to say,
people love using
the stuff just floating in the air. If you just let the grape juice alone for a while, it'll start bubbling. It's like sourdough. That's as opposed to, it's just, low intervention, low manipulation, kind of letting the wine speak for itself. And sometimes you get a product that's really cool and interesting, and sometimes you get a product that is just like glorified vinegar.
It is. No, actually, I totally agree, which is unfortunately the byproduct of low intervention. Hey, if it turns to vinegar, low intervention, it's vinegar now. Like that's one of the drawbacks. One of the things that there's a benefit of stability that you try and introduce when you have more intervention, because you're monitoring, you're making sure that things are produced, I don't know, the way that you want it to be. But I say that like I've had that same experience. I've had some outstanding natural wines, and actually there's a few natural wines that we're carrying now that are just super consistent, but I've had some bad experiences, exactly like what you just described. But I'm going to be right back because I want to at least show these wines to some people. Give me 1 second. And shout out to Amanda from JNL to show us this, but this guy is a Pinot that is one of the first biodynamic, organic, and I would say sustainably produced Pinots that started a while ago. And then also there's a Ampelos Rosé of Syrah that we're carrying too. These guys are both super natural and they're consistent. And that's one of the hardest things that I've been able to at least experience when I've tasted, natural wines. And I don't know if you had a lot too, but natural wines, woo, they're everywhere, which is nature.
Yeah, and that it's really hard to say what is natural wine. It's hard to even just pin down it as a category. But what is interesting is that it creates, I don't know, there's a lot of fervor behind natural wine, so much so that there are those out there who produce it and say like, this is true wine, all other wine is false. And it's like, no, this, to me, it's another philosophy, it's another expression of wine. I'm all for sustainable practices in the vineyard, biodynamicy, organic certification. I'm all for that. And it's hard to say like taste. I don't think anybody